Today we have three different industry professionals joining us from Alpha Impact 8, Visible Hands VC, and XRC Labs. Thank you all so much for being here. First off, I'm going to have you each give a brief introduction of yourselves and the companies you're representing today. Let us know what types of funding you have experience with and what types of founders should be reaching out to you. So we'll start with Sophia. I'll kick it off to you first.
Hi, thank you, Maya. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Huck. I am a program manager at XRC Labs. We are a venture fund and accelerator that focuses on consumer and retail. We started about now 6 to 7 years ago, initially as a VC accelerator, and then now have expanded into a fund. And we consider ourselves to be domain experts in the retail and consumer areas, which, this can consist of next-gen commerce, it can consist of consumerization of healthcare, et cetera. And so the cool thing about our company is that we have the accelerator part as well as a fund aspect to it. So when you are a company and we invest in you, you get access to all these incredible resources that we offer through our mentorship program, through our external partnerships, et cetera. I will definitely go in much more deeper as we kind of continue along, but we're really looking for people at the intersectionality of, again, consumer and retail. And if any of these areas really stand out to you or resonate with you in terms of what you're trying to build, would love to connect with you, as currently we are recruiting for our 14th cohort and applications are due at the end of day this Thursday.
Oh yeah, feel free to jump in next, Darrel, or you wanna?
Sure, I can go ahead. So my name is Jimena. I work as a junior partner at AIA Ventures, which is a VC fund that invests from the seed stage onwards. And our thesis revolves around involving with minority-led startup founders. And we not only cover the US market, we also cover the Latin American market. So if you have a startup that operates in Latin America, we do check out those startups so long as they are incorporated in the US. So right now we already have several startups from Latin America in our portfolio, and all of these startups were incorporated in the US, but we're operating in the LATAM market. So if you're interested in learning more about this, please let me know.
Awesome, glad to be here. My name is Darrel. I'm an investor at Visible Hands VC. We're a pre-seed venture capital firm investing in underrepresented founders, focusing on women and founders of color. We make investments through our 14-week accelerator program, investing up to $175K per team using a 2-check model. All founders that get accepted to the program get an initial $25K investment, and then they have the opportunity to receive up to an additional $150K follow-on investment. And aside from our core accelerator program, we also have other programs that we're working on in partnership with other organizations, such as our VHLX program, which is a partnership with Google for startups, focusing on Latinx founders. And then we are working with Amazon as well for their accelerator for Black founders, as well as their upcoming accelerator for female founders. And we have a few other programs that are in the works that are coming out soon. So love to stay in touch. All our programming are specifically for pre-seed and just really early stage founders. Really like to be the first check in and the first investors working with these founders at the earliest stages of company building. So love to learn more about you guys as well and help whatever ways that I can.
Awesome. Thank you to the three of you for those amazing introductions. As you can see, we just have some amazing people in the room today. I love how we have a mix of, VC, investing, accelerator programs. So we are about to get into all of that with these questions. And attendees, feel free to write any follow-up questions, comments, resources, anything you'd like to share or ask in the chat. I will keep an eye on that in the chat. So just know that that's open there for you. Okay, so first thing, kicking it off for our early stage founders, pre-seed founders, wondering, where does one start to look for funding when you're in the beginning development stages of starting your business? You're starting to gain some traction, maybe like beta testing, and now you're like, okay, I need to really, really start fundraising and looking for that first round or just first form of funding. What advice would you have, tips, tricks, anything for founders in that position? And feel free to just jump in on the questions here. Just feel free to take the floor.
I can jump in. So the question was in regards to how to get started in regards to finding funding for your startup. So in regards to fundraising, like you said in the beginning, there are so many sources of capital, whether that be going directly to VCs, angel investors, seeking programs with grants, bootstrapping, finding loans from banks and other sources. It really comes down to identifying what kind of capital is going to suit your needs as a business, how much you're going to need, and your resources for acquiring those forms of capital. So it really starts with a self-assessment about your company and your needs and your capabilities to assessing those capital sources and whether or not they align with kind of the structure of your business and the use case and the kind of archetype of your business. Because certain capital fits well or better with certain types of businesses, and you want to have that alignment. And we can dive deeper into that conversation as well. But it really starts with identifying what type of capital you'll be seeking, and taking the steps for each of those lanes to acquire those sources of capital.
Yeah, exactly. Darrel, I completely agree with everything that you said. So a little bit of background about myself. I actually am also a founder. So I was a part of Grid 110's fall 2020 idea to product program. And I'm very, very, very proud to be a Griddy. And that's where my venture experience actually kind of started and when I knew I wanted to get into venture. And so something for myself, I was deciding whether or not my organization was going to be a B Corp or a nonprofit. And the great thing about being a part of an accelerator like Grid 110 is they don't take any equity in your company. So ultimately, you're really setting that foundation, even from like a pre-seed or like point of perspective, to be able to build out your business plan. At the same time, you're also gaining access to exclusive resources and funding that may not be as accessible if you were not a part of the accelerator. One of the things that I learned about through the accelerator was like SBA.gov and local grants and I Fund Women. And then also looking into the fact that there are so many, larger companies that are providing incredible grants, for example, from Sephora or Glossier or, Google, et cetera. So I think that, kind of going off of what Darrel said, it really depends on like what your needs are. When you get to the point where you are going to be, potentially, wanting to, apply to a VC fund, now you're going to have a partner in what you're doing. Somebody's directly invested in your company. So now that's going to be another layer added onto that. Whereas when you're really just kind of going through and finding these grants, it's free money. So I always kind of tell founders, kind of similar to what Darrel said, like figure out like where you're trying to go. And I think the best thing that you can do is really utilize those resources and those grants that are given away, not based necessarily even on performance, but really based off of ethnicity, socioeconomic status, based on the type of company that you are building. Like these are really incredible resources that I definitely recommend early on.
Yeah, and just as Sophia and Darrel said, I think the first thing that you should be trying to do is just to clarify, okay, what are the stages that my startup will most likely go through? So at AI8 Ventures, we always make sure that the startups that we invest in already have product market fit. So if you are going to apply to an accelerator or to angels, you need to know, okay, so am I product market fit, or am I still kind of like figuring out what my business model might be? And before reaching out, try to just like clarify, okay, like what do I want to do with this startup? Am I ready to start talking like to other angel investors or to a VC fund? And if you are at a stage that where you feel that you are already ready, you already have some traction, maybe you have an idea which is like taking form, and you said, well, right now might be a good time to talk to some angels just to get my runway, to extend my runway. Just make sure that the story that you're telling is something that you're passionate about and that you understand. Because if you're still like figuring it out, then you need to try to get into an accelerator or get some tools in order to clarify your vision before moving on to the next stage. So when starting a startup, you need to divide your journey by stages. I think that's gonna be the easiest for you and for the people that you're talking to, because as a VC, we're always trying to figure out, okay, so at what stage is this startup in? Are they like getting ready to raise their seed round? Maybe we can just wait a couple more months, see if they have some more traction before we start engaging with them. So that's something that you need to keep in mind when you're trying to get funded.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you to the three of you, kind of just presenting really like the wide range of options that founders have. From, I heard grants mentioned, and thank you, Sophia, for dropping a lot of great resources in the chat, everything from loans to, of course, VC. Jimena, I'm really glad you mentioned angels. And so, yeah, there are really just so many paths to funding out there. And I did see we got quite a few follow-up questions in the chat. So thank you everyone for being super active in the chat. I will ask that we save any company specific or more personal questions for the breakout rooms, as our speakers would be able to, tailor their answer more to your company type or what you may be looking for. But I saw we did get a question about traction, and that was actually what I was going to go to next. So we had a question submitted that was, how do you define traction? This founder said, a challenge I have is investors all seem to define traction very differently. So if there's any maybe like KPIs or benchmarks, or maybe not even, quantitatively, but or even qualitatively, that they can define traction and present that in a way to whether it's investors or if they're, applying for a program, to best define that traction.
Sure. I can start from the VC side. So traction, obviously, it varies depending on the startup. So the traction that's going to be important for us investors will depend on your business model and what your product is. So if, say, I don't know, we have one startup called Empower, and they provide loans to foreign students. And the traction that we measure with for Empower is how much loans are they granting, how much money is being returned, how are the interests, how much revenue do they have based on the loans that they provide. So if you have, I don't know, like a YouTube, obviously that traction will be very different than from a startup company that provides loans. And that traction that you should provide to the investor is the one that you believe is the most important for your business. It's not about what the investor thinks it's traction. It's about what you think it's traction and what are the key metrics that can show the investor who doesn't know your business model, doesn't have all the details about your business. So you're the one who have to tell the investor, okay, these are the metrics that we run our business by. And it's important that we're growing because of X, Y, and Z. So you should be the one who guides the investor to fully understand your business, because you're the one who are running a business 24/7. We're just like starting to get to know you, but it does take time before the investor starts to figure out, okay, these are the important metrics based on the information that the startup founder has told me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Jimena. And I think this is where every single founder is really going to have to do their own due diligence on like every single fund that they're, potentially trying to interact with. Like, it is really important to keep track of the different funds and investors that you're reaching out to. It's really important to understand what traction, how traction is defined for every single one, because for example, XRC is going to define traction in maybe a completely different way than Visible Hands or, Jimena's VC as well. So that's what I would say. I think the second thing is, as someone who's been through an accelerator, I think one of the things that I learned specifically from Grid 110 is how important it is to know who your consumer is, and how a lot of companies fail at even knowing who their customer is. Just because something is a problem for you does not mean it's a problem for a lot of people. So, when from our perspective, it's like we want to see that this is a problem for really, a lot of people. So for example, we had a company, who was in our most recent cohort who, they're working on like post-op recovery care, and they were able to show us that this is a huge problem for hospitals. There's a huge problem, on a national scale, and they were able to do so by really understanding their consumers and understanding we're going after doctors. Like, those are our consumers. It's not just like a patient, it's also the doctors, it's the hospitals, etc. So if you can really show that you know who your customer persona is, and like Jimena said, like VCs only have 30 minutes with you sometimes. If you can't be clear about who your customer is, you're wasting their time, and also you're making yourself look bad, like completely, just being completely honest. So really invest in that, and invest in doing customer discovery, surveys, interviewing, and again, another way to kind of plug Grid 110, but those are all things that I really learned and how to perfect through Grid 110 that I've taken with me in everything that I've done thus far.
And to piggyback after everything that was said, traction is definitely going to be something that is viewed differently from every investor. So as at Visible Hands, we invest early as idea stage. So founders that have an idea obviously aren't going to have any traction. So you have to just be mindful of who you're pitching and what do they look for in a company. Traction may be something that they are looking for, then you want to kind of dig deeper. A lot of times they have it on their website where they're looking for. Someone said my mic is not working properly. Can everyone hear me properly?
Yeah.
Great. Well, in regards to like a lot of times VCs on their website, they put the metrics that they're interested in seeing, whether it be revenue markers, or in like MRR or ARR, or in terms of user growth or growth, in terms of their just ability to showcase that. And it's really up to you to know who you're pitching and what they deem as traction and what they care about. Like I said, Visible Hands, we invest from idea stage, pre-product, pre-revenue, early traction. So we look at it a little bit differently than other investors may. But just really be mindful of who you're pitching and how they're viewing traction.
Yeah, thank you. This is super helpful. It sounds like bottom line is, do your homework, know who you're investing to, and know your ins and outs of your business just like the back of your hand. And that's really how you'll be able to present that traction the best. So kind of continuing on the investor topic, I know we got a question about this in the chat, and this has been a hot topic circulating around Twitter, and just a lot of questions submitted about this. So, I know maybe not everyone can speak to this in the room, but if you have any tips for founders on, make sure we mute you, on how to navigate the current tough market where there has been a tremendous fear of recession, and kind of just like how the current economic circumstances may be affecting VC investment activities, especially for pre-seed and seed rounds, and if there's anything like founders should be aware of, or just how to navigate that. If you could speak to that.
Jump into this one. In regards to like the market and how things are looking in regards to the fundraising landscape, I would assume a lot of people in this room are at the earliest stages, pre-seed, seed, and honestly, unless your business is dependent upon venture capital funding, where like, hey, if I don't raise my next round, we're pretty much going to shut down. A lot of the people at the very early stages are not going to be affected as much in the short term. Now, let's say in regards to if the downturn continues and investors are reluctant to make investments, and then when you go out to market for fundraising, it may be more difficult. If that happens, then when you do go try to fundraise, it may be difficult at that time if this continues. But in the interim or in the short term, at the very early stages, a lot of these funds and a lot of these companies are not going to be too much impacted. But with that being said, you want to just be mindful about focusing on company building. VC and just also fundraising in general for most businesses shouldn't be the only thing that matters for your business. You should really double down on being able to build your business, have a solid team, and making sure that you're building something great that's going to satisfy your customers. And hopefully you're getting to a point to where you actually can earn revenue from your users, your customers, and have a model that could support your business and the growth of your revenues. But I would say for most early stage founders, it's not going to impact you too much, but if it continues, you might see it a little bit harder to fundraise when the time comes.
Yeah, and from the VC side, just from later stages, what we've been focusing most now is just to make sure that the valuation is not overvalued. So for startups at the later stages, we are going to see a cut in valuations, which will just mean that you'll dilute yourself more. But it doesn't mean that the money isn't there, because we're still actively investing. So the money is not going to go anywhere. It's just that you're going to have to dilute yourself more in this stage. We have seen several startups who started to fundraise kind of like a cushion before the downturn. Personally, I think that every startup founder should make sure to keep in check their mindset and not get into like a fearful state, because that's just going to make you make a lot more mistakes instead of like just focusing and being proactive with the things that you can control, which is building your business. So try not to go down the fear spiral. That's not going to be helpful for you.
Yeah, thank you, Jimena and Darrel. I feel like that is really helpful to kind of like putting our founders' minds at ease. I know there has just been so much buzz on social media and everyone talking about this. So like Jimena says, it's really important to just, think about your business. Is this directly affecting me? And kind of put everything into perspective. So yeah, those answers are very helpful. We got a lot of people wondering about that. So thank you so much. I know we're kind of like halfway now, so I'll do one more question and then we will transition to the breakout rooms. I know a lot of people have been putting, again, like some pretty more specific questions in the chat, and those will be perfect for the breakout rooms. So again, be thinking about who of the three speakers might be best for you to connect with and just ask more of those personalized questions, and based on their backgrounds and experience, they can provide those answers. So for the last question, I was just wondering, a little more general to funding, what tools or plans, strategies do you recommend for tracking fundraising and kind of like strategizing a fundraising plan? Any resources you can share? And then also, I know, Sophia, you dropped some in the chat earlier, but any extra places where founders can like research or find funding opportunities? I know we also mentioned like angel investors earlier. Founders have expressed that they have trouble like meeting angel investors or like finding them. So anything you can provide for connecting to these various routes of funding.
Sure. So I'll start with the angel investing. So from what I understand, I know that there are several founder groups that if you look for like founder groups in Austin, a lot of these groups have access to angel investors, and you may be able to find them that way. The other route you can take is just by looking at AngelList. A lot of the syndicates have angel investors there, and then you can just reach out via LinkedIn or some other contact that you find. Personally, I would say go with people you know within your network. Start asking for referrals. Like, do you know someone who likes investing? Start with small tickets and work your way up. And in regards to how can you go through the fundraising process, I would say have like plans A to C, because you're always going to have to be recalculating your plan. So don't panic, like just keep sending out emails and reaching out to new people, and like keep a list in Excel of all the people that you have reached out. And as soon as they say either yes or no, like keep track of it just to feel that you're making progress, because this can be a long and tedious process, and you want to be hopeful and feeling that you're making progress in some way, even if you haven't secured any funding yet. Like just keep reaching out and keep trying new things, because I think that's like startup founders need to understand that there isn't like a one-way path. There are many different paths, and you're gonna have to try to see what works for you and what doesn't, and just keep iterating.
I can jump in and add. For me, when I was full-time as a founder, a lot of great resources that I was able to see and keep track of great opportunities were joining and following great newsletters. A lot of the newsletters that are out there weekly will put out different opportunities that are available, and it will introduce you to new grant opportunities, pitch competitions, accelerator programs, and different deadlines that you can apply to. So that's one area that I found a lot of success in as a founder, and was able to take advantage of. As a founder, I won a large number of pitch competitions, and I won about 40K in non-dilutive capital. And these opportunities are out there, and as you do more of them, you get pretty good at it, and it almost becomes a rinse and repeat. I can remember just applying to so many different programs, and a tip that I used was that every time I applied to a different program, I saved all my answers, and then I applied to new programs, and I referenced my old answers and updated them, iterated them, but at least I had some context to go off of, because it does get a bit draining to apply to all these different programs and opportunities, especially if you're not seeing a lot of success in connecting to them. So to find some really great newsletters is a great way to stay up to date. I know Grid 110 has an amazing newsletter. Visible Hands, we have great newsletters, and a lot of firms and organizations have great resources and newsletters that you can tap into.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to it from the grant perspective as well. Darrell shared some really amazing advice, and kind of tying into what Jimena said as well, really just keeping track of everything that you apply to. And similar to Darrell, like for our organization, it's like we have a solid thing in place. This is our mission. This is our values. These are our 4 pillars. Like everything is very consistent, and then we adjust it at maybe every few months, depending on, the success rate of obtaining specific grants. So, that for me, before you even start applying, you need to figure out like your why. You need to figure out all those answers to those questions, because you're just selling yourself short if you're applying to these grants and you're not ready. And then once you have that all finalized, you can start the process. And I think another, something to kind of think about as well is really figure out like who your mentors in this space, right? Like being a founder, it's so important to have mentors. Mickey from Grid 110 is one of my mentors, and she'll always share resources with me that are like relatable to the organization I started, whether it be grants, whether it be just like job opportunities. Actually, the job I got at XRC was because Mickey shared it with me. Just having really amazing mentors who believe in you and believe in what you're building is so important, because like both Jimena and Darrell, mentioned and have spoken to already, it's like it's very much relationship driven industry. So just because maybe that person can't help you now doesn't mean that they can't help you down the line, and it's just really important to build that rapport with them. So definitely just keep track of everything, and don't get discouraged. always figure out how you can fine tune things. Just because something's not working now does not mean it won't ever work. Just continue to build, 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 reach out to mentors, ask them for their feedback and tweak it. And before you know it, you will see results.
Yeah, these are some really awesome answers. Thank you all. I'm so glad that we got to touch on, from angels to VC, grants, accelerator programs, pitch competitions. Super glad you brought that up, Darrell. But bottom line is, just keep doing your work, keep chugging along, and don't lose faith. It will come. There will be a ton of no's, but there will be that one yes. So like Jimena said, be sure to keep track of your progress and know that each day you are doing something to get there, and one day it will come.